dictators. Joining me now is Maria Teresa Kumar, President and CEO of Voto Latino. Jelani Cobb, Professor at Columbia Journalism School. Craig Unger, Vanity Fair contributor and author of House of Trump, House of Putin. And Representative Ted Lieu, Democrat from California, and a member of the Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committees. I want to go to you first, Congressman. What did you make of it? Watching an American president do this thing that Tom Nichols, who is an expert on the history of the Soviet Union and of that region, described as looking like an old Soviet kind of, parade.
Thank you, Jory, for your question. Let me just first say that natural disasters like earthquakes can strike at any time, and I urge everyone to be prepared with supplies and a safety plan. Now, to answer your question, one of the big problems with Trump's July 4th event is that it was a campaign event paid for by the American taxpayer. Not only did he divert millions of dollars to this event, he also had the Republican National Committee give out passes, VIP passes, to major donors. That was outrageous. That was really a violation of our ethics, and he made a mockery of our Independence Day.
And thank you for mentioning what's going on in your state. We just saw 2 natural disasters in the state of California. So this is a time when the federal government actually has priorities that are important that we should be spending money on. Things like making sure that states are ready for natural disasters like you just saw in your state. So when you see the President of the United States diverting money so that he can have planes fly over him rather than the money on important things like that, or maybe uncaging children, which he's also doing in the state of California and Arizona and other places. As a member of Congress, is there something that you guys plan to do about that? Because this does seem like a tremendous waste of money.
Members of Congress can't even use official resources to participate in a parade. In this case, Trump diverted $2.5 million of national park fees to pay for his party. And I've asked the Federal Election Commission to look into this, because how can you have all this taxpayer money do this event and then have the Republican National Committee be involved in such a major way, handing out VIP passes to their major donors?
Yeah. And besides that, I want to go to you, Craig Unger. You've written a lot about Donald Trump, his mafia sort of relationships that he's had throughout his career, particularly when it comes to Russia. This is what Michael McFaul, who was the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, tweeted after Donald Trump's weird parade. He said, "I knew this was coming." Tweet from Julia Davis News. Russia's state TV is obsessively bashing Trump's low-energy, weak parade with rusty tanks. The hosts LOL at Trump's claim about Revolutionary War airports and other historical flubs. There's your city upon a hill. There's your world leader. And Martians have been defeated. The fact is that Donald Trump not only wasted America's money to make himself a campaign commercial, but he also has subjected the United States to mockery, because real dictatorships know what a dictator parade is supposed to look like, Craig.
Right. Well, at least sometimes they get their facts straight. And I mean, it's interesting that if the Russian state TV is going after Trump, that doesn't happen without Vladimir Putin say so. It's also interesting that clip you showed, the number of historical errors, and it is just extraordinary. And the White House has of speech writing with lots of researchers and interns, and they fact check things. And there are only 3 possibilities for that level of transcendental stupidity to take place. One is that office is completely filled with people with room temperature IQ. The other is that all the procedures have fallen apart and they don't exist anymore. And the third possibility is it sprang from the brain of Donald Trump, and that is deeply, deeply disturbing.
Yeah, there's a lot about it that's disturbing, Jelani. I want to go to you on this. I'm glad that you're here, just to have an historical context to all of this. Donald Trump really admires dictatorships around the world. He seems to really admire Kim Jong-un. All of the media has been saying that this is supposed to be sort of his version of the Bastille Day ceremony. But I pointed out earlier this week on Msnbc, the whole Bastille Day thing is about sending a message to dictators. That's what the whole Bastille Day parade is about. This is clearly not that, because Donald Trump likes dictators. That's not what he's trying to send a message doing. So So in your mind, what is this? What was the message of what you saw? I don't know if you watched it, but what was the message that you think came out of what Donald Trump did this week?
Oh, it was pure grandiosity and self-inflation. And so one of the things I think that's significant here is that the United States, at least in theory, is supposed to operate on the doctrine that we are a nation of laws, that no one is above the law, and that the Constitution is the fundamental authority. That is a different position, fundamentally different position than a state in which the personality or the authoritarian leader is the head of all interests and ideas within the state. And so what Donald Trump did was essentially hijack this idea and turn it into something that was supposed to glorify himself. Now, there's kind of interesting paradox here, which is that several years ago, I did a Fulbright fellowship, and I spent an entire semester in Moscow teaching at Moscow University. And at the end of the semester, there was the May 9th celebration. Anybody who has been to Russia or knows, about their history post-World War II, May 9th is a gigantic celebration that happens each year. It's somewhere between the 4th of July and New Year's, and it is a recognition of the Soviet defeat of the Nazi threat, an existential threat that confronted them during World War II. So it's huge, and I'm able to be there for the parade, and there's just this kind of complete procession of military vehicles. There are missiles, there are tanks, there are armored vehicles, there are jeeps, and it looks like an army amassing for an invasion. And so someone turns to me and says, "Do you do the same thing in the United States on the 4th of July?" I said, no, this would never happen in the United States because they, in the United States, we believe that there should be a really clear distinction between civilian authority and military might, and that our authority is supposed to, at least in theory, stem from our laws and our moral beliefs. And what Donald Trump did was essentially invert that, to create it as a kind of satirical, almost, emulation of something that he sees in Vladimir Putin. We should recognize this as the anti-democratic movement that it actually was.
Yeah, I mean, Maria Teresa, that is an excellent point. I mean, Eugene Robinson made a similar point when he talked about the fact that Trump tried to make himself look big by doing this piece. A little bit of what Eugene wrote, it was clear from the beginning that Independence Day meant nothing more to Trump than an opportunity to choreograph a made-for-television re-election event and give himself an obscenely expensive ego message. It invoked mockery. There's a cartoon that we're going to show here that's drawn on what airplanes would look like during the Revolutionary War. It's a picture of Ben Franklin attached to two kites. There it is. And this is by somebody I know, Natalie Johnson, who drew that. I mean, here's the reality. Donald Trump, it seems, wants to be seen as this big man, right? He wants to be seen as this grand leader of this great military. But what he actually can accomplish through his own, the quality of the staff that he has around him is he can't do that. He can't do what Jelani just talked about, right? I mean, the reality was, right, even in the case of Russia, which now is an adversary of the United States, during World War II, they were fighting the Nazis, right? So if they're doing a big celebration, they're talking about defeating the Nazi empire. They're sort of sending a message again to dictators. There are only two kinds of these kinds of parades. There's that, and there's the one like in North Korea. Trump is trying to do it because I think he thinks he's emulating it. He doesn't even know how.
Or really why.
This is to Maria.
We are the largest military operations in the world. We don't have to. We don't have to show that type of display of force because the world already knows it. And what I found so disappointing when it came to the July 4th is to commemorate our roots as Americans, where we come from, the fact that we may have fled different countries and we came here because we recognize that our Americanism, our DNA is this idea that we're a nation of immigrants and we have strength, and we don't have to show military might because the world already knows it. And what Donald Trump did was such a sad display because he didn't even have the courage to actually join the military when his card was up. He instead deferred it on bone spurs, and so he basically not only deteriorates the flag but also the meaning of what it means to be an American and what it means to be July 4th, what it means to come together as a nation. The reason that presidents don't show up on July 4th and don't make it about them is because it's one country under one flag and one unity. It's not supposed to be partisan. And what instead he did is he created a campaign rally trying to differentiate and divide us. And what I espouse, and I think that what was really beautiful is that you still saw families on that lawn saying, I'm apolitical, I'm here to share families. And that's what we should remind people of what July 4th is. We don't have to show military might. We don't have to scare the world. We know what we are. We know who we are. And we know that we do it with justice. The fact that he can do this in the backdrop of caging children, that is not who we are. And the more that we can actually make sure that we are standing strong to those values, despite what I call this aberration in our history, we have to make sure that we are very clear-minded of what it means to be American and what it means to be democratic and what it means to be fair and just.
Yeah, very quickly, just let everybody go through one last chance. Jelani, do you think that what you saw, what Donald Trump made us look stronger or weaker as a country?
Oh, absolutely weaker. The worst part of it is that had this actually not been an inept display of pseudo-authoritarianism, we still would have looked weaker. If he had done this correctly, in air quotes correctly, we would have looked weaker. But now we look doubly weak because it is a poor imitation of something that was never meant to be imitated in the first place.
Yeah, very quickly, and to go to you, Craig, when the Russians look at us, I mean, they're already laughing at us. I mean, Donald Trump thinks they're his best friends. Are they his friends, or is he now a subject of even mockery to them?
Well, I think he is subject to mockery, and I think Jelani's absolutely right. The images that come away from it today are we have concentration camps on the border. We have tanks by the Lincoln Memorial. The mall there was an interesting piece in the Washington Post. The architecture is about reconciliation. It's by the Lincoln Memorial. Our original sin was slavery. We had a civil war, and this is where we were supposed to have reconciliation. Instead, today we have images of tanks and the whole crisis at the border.
I'm going to give you the last word, Congressman, because you are a member of the Air Force, I believe. You've served in the military. As a person who actually did serve, unlike Donald Trump, when you saw tanks rolling down the nation's capital, your thoughts were what?
Having served on active duty in the military, we've been trained to not participate in partisan campaign events. There's a Department of Defense directive that prohibits military members from showing up in uniform at a campaign rally. This was a massive taxpayer-funded campaign rally with the Republican National Committee handing out VIP passes. It really eroded what should be a nonpartisan military, and that was sad and disappointing.
Yeah, thank you all for being here and sending out really good thoughts to your state, Congressman Lieu. Thank you very much, all of you. Maria Teresa is going to be back. Jelani Cobb, Craig Unger, and Congressman Ted Lieu. Thank you guys very much. And coming up, as Donald Trump celebrated himself on the 4th of July, people looking for a better future were locked in cages.